Good day. Welcome back to our module on Asian Ethical Teachings, and still with us is Dr. Manuel Dy Jr. So, sir, welcome back. And this time, for our second module, we are going to talk about another major religion in Asia, which is Buddhism.
Buddhism.
So, please, sir, can you please provide us with an overview of this religion?
Okay. So Buddhism is one of the world religions, okay, and it's Asian because it began in India, okay, uh, as a heterodox religion, meaning not orthodox. The orthodox religion is Hinduism, okay, and Buddhism is outside of that orthodox because it's really a reaction, even at the start against Hinduism, okay. Hinduism became very rigid, okay, and so it did not help people anymore to reach their salvation, okay. And so here comes Gautama, Buddha, okay. Of course, the story there is that when his mother was pregnant with him, there's a fortune teller who told that this baby would eventually either become a great ruler or a religious leader. And so the father, of course, in other words, the father did not expose him to the world outside, okay, because the father, the king, wanted him to be a ruler, okay. But then he heard a music from a foreign language, okay. So he was curious what was outside the palace. So eventually he asked to be outside the palace. Okay, but the ruler, his father, in other words, prevented him from seeing the realities outside. But eventually he came out of the entourage and he met four people. A pauper, an old man, a leper, and a corpse. Okay. So he was intrigued. So he escaped from the palace, went to several teachers, but he was not satisfied. He tried fasting. He almost died. So he said, "This is not the way to find the answer." Okay. So he sat under a tree, and then he was enlightened. And the enlightenment came in the Four Noble Truths.
I see.
Okay, and the Eightfold Path. Okay. So what are the Four Noble Truths? Number one, life is dukkha, meaning life is suffering. Okay. Number two, the cause of life's suffering is tanha. Tanha means craving, desiring for one's own fulfillment at the expense of other forms of life. Okay? So that's the second truth. The third is there is a cure for overcoming craving, okay, and attachment. That's the third noble truth. And the fourth is the Eightfold Path. The way to eliminate craving, clinging is the Eightfold Path.
I see.
Okay? The Eightfold Path would be, number one, right view or right knowledge, right faith, okay. Number two, right thought, okay, or right aspiration. Number three, right speech. Okay. Number four, right action or behavior. Number five, right living or right livelihood. Okay. And number six, right effort. Number seven, right mindfulness or attentiveness. And finally, right concentration. Okay. So that's the Eightfold Path. If you'll notice, the first three, right view, right knowledge, and right speech, are rational.
I see.
Okay. And the second, right action, right living, right effort, would be volitional. Okay. And then the last two, right mindfulness, right concentration, would be emotional. So it captures the whole being, no, the rational, the volitional, and the emotional.
Okay.
And the final aim, of course, is to reach nirvana.
Nirvana.
Okay.
Alright. Okay.
Nirvana is cannot be described.
Mm-mm.
Okay? But it's really literally the cessation of suffering. Okay?
Okay.
The extinguish suffering. Okay?
So when we look at the Eightfold Path, it's all about right view, right thought, right speech, and right action, etc. So how is right defined? How do you know that what you're doing is actually the right thing? Were there standards set by Buddha, or where is it derived from, the concept of the right?
The Buddha is often described as compassionate.
Okay.
Okay? So eventually, the two aspects of the moral behavior is avoiding evil and cultivating the good. Okay, and the good refers really eventually to a compassionate compassion or universal love. It's the love. The thing about the Buddha is, unlike our concept of charity, which is just interpersonal maybe, and also only to human beings. Okay, the love of the universal love of Buddha is the love for all living creatures, for all living creatures. So what is good would be not hurting, not killing. No. So that's the right behavior.
I see. All right. So that concept of the universal love, universal compassion. Okay. All right, sir. So this Eightfold Path is connected to the Four Noble Truths,
Correct.
as you have mentioned. Can you please elaborate on this? Because when I look at the enumeration of the Four Noble Truths, there is suffering, and then there's craving, and there's cure, right? So I would assume that the suffering will be born out of the flesh, I would suppose. And then the craving is also born out of the flesh. But I'm curious about the cure. What is this cure in the Four Noble Truths about?
The Buddha is like a medical doctor. No?
Okay.
I think Buddhism is the only philosophy and religion that identifies life with suffering. No? The Buddha is not blind to the joys in life. Okay, but for him, there is no permanent joy. Everything falls under causation. Okay, everything is impermanent. Okay. And so life is basically suffering because nothing is permanent. But the cause of this suffering is our craving. No, we crave for permanence, we crave for things, for wealth, for power, but they are not eternal.
Okay.
They're not permanent. And that's why we suffer. Okay? So the cure for this craving is found in the Eightfold Path.
I see.
Okay?
Okay.
The Eightfold Path eventually gave rise to several what they call pangkasila, or the virtues.
Virtues.
Okay.
Okay.
The five virtues would be restrain from taking life, okay, from taking what is not given, okay, from indulgence in sense pleasures,
Okay.
in falsehood, okay, and indolence, okay,
Okay.
which is a consequence of the use of intoxicants.
Okay.
So the Buddhists would not drink liquor. I remember we were in a Buddhist hotel for a conference, and all our meals were veggie foods, okay, and the liquor was vinegar.
Okay.
To substitute for our liquor.
I
Okay.
see. All
Yeah.
right. Because that affects that affects their functioning.
Okay. And then you also have the 10 moral virtues, which includes, after the first four, restrain from slander, from harsh or rough speech, okay, frivolous chatter, chismis,
Okay.
okay,
Okay.
covetousness,
Uh-huh.
malevolence, wishing people evil,
Mm-hmm.
and false or heretical views.
I see. Okay.
So these are the virtues that arose from the Eightfold Path.
Eightfold Path. All right. Okay. So, wow, that's quite a list. And all Buddhists are expected to follow these virtues, right? So, how does one acquire these virtues now? Just like my question in Hinduism, I wonder how the Hindu people practice, or teach the young ones.
Correct.
I wonder how the Buddhists train the young Buddhists to be able to adopt all of these virtues, because it's quite a long list.
Yeah. Eventually, in the history of Buddhism, it branched out into
Okay.
two sects.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The Theravada,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes they're called the Hinayana.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hinayana means small vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Theravadis would not want to be called small vehicles. So they prefer to be called Theravada.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the Mahayana,
Mm-hmm.
which literally means larger vehicle.
I see.
Okay.
Okay.
So the older branch is, of course, the Theravada.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And later branch is the Mahayana.
Mm-hmm.
The Mahayana arose out of compassion of the Buddha.
Mm-hmm.
It is said that when he was about to reach the shore of Nirvana,
Mm-hmm.
he heard the wails, the crying of the people in the other shore.
Mm-hmm.
And so he made a vow that he would not step on the shore of Nirvana until everybody is saved.
Oh, okay.
So that's why it's called the larger vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the emphasis,
Mm-hmm.
the Theravadis is a full-time Buddhist.
Buddhist.
In other words, you really live in the temple.
I see.
Okay.
Okay.
But the Mahayana
Mm-hmm.
is you can be you go through a training in a discipline,
Mm-hmm.
but eventually you come out, you get out. So it's not a full-time
Mm-hmm.
life,
Mm-hmm.
okay, for the Mahayanis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but for the Theravadis,
Mm-hmm.
they live in temples. It's a full-time.
I see.
Okay.
Okay.
So they go through a discipline.
So
Okay.
so that's how these young people now adopt the
Correct.
virtues.
Yes.
I see. Okay. Wow. And there are some of them that do it full time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
That's why they're dressed in
so-
yellow or
okay.
yeah.
And sir, I find that these things, the virtues that you have mentioned are very interesting because, again, there are counterparts. For example, in the Christian tradition, no, like the Ten Commandments, etc.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm just curious, sir, no, because when we were talking about Hinduism earlier and now we're talking about Buddhism, it seems like there has always been an emphasis on compassion. It's really more of self-denial, and it's geared towards looking at the other person. And in the case of Buddhism, it's actually the universe, right? All living life forms, no? So how does one now adopt or practice Buddhism in his day-to-day existence if you are not, let's say, if you're not a Buddhist monk? How does he observe these virtues?
Okay. We have a phenomenon now in the Philippines where Catholics use Buddhist methods
Okay.
to practice their Catholicism. They're called Buddholics.
Buddholics.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they make use of Buddhist contemplation. Okay.
Meditation.
Meditation. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
To discipline themselves. To practice eliminating craving. Okay? So you go through the process of meditation. In fact, diba, one of the 7th step is right mindfulness.
Yes.
Okay. That is now practiced by psychology. Okay. You have seminars on right mindfulness.
Mindfulness,
Okay,
yes. Uh-huh.
so that you can do your job more efficiently. Okay, and you can avoid stress, burnouts. Okay, so right mindfulness. So that's part of the discipline.
The discipline. Uh-huh. Okay, so sir, why is it that it seems like in this Eastern religions or these Asian religions, why is this the mastery of the mind of primary importance? Because both in Hinduism and Buddhism, there seems to be an emphasis on meditation and contemplation. So why is it important for people practicing this religion to gain mastery of the mind?
Uh, because an action cannot be called moral, okay, unless there is the element of knowledge, okay. And in other words, you cannot have action alone without contemplation. Okay, they go together. In fact, that's one of the characteristics of the emphasis of Saint Ignatius. We are celebrating the feast of Saint Ignatius today.
Yes,
Okay,
July 31.
so there's
Ateneo.
there's a contemplation in action and action in contemplation. Okay, and that's why in the Buddhist temple, for example, they have it's like a seminary. In other words, they have times for prayer and contemplation,
Okay.
and then times for manual work. Okay, and but in doing your work, you must always have that contemplation. In other words, you're doing your even if you're just sweeping the floor.
I see.
Okay,
Okay.
if you're doing it under the right mindfulness, okay, you have good karma there.
Okay.
You have good karma there.
So you've mentioned karma again.
Okay.
All right. Is there any difference with the karma in Buddhism and karma in Hinduism?
There is no difference except in the notion of reincarnation.
I see. So which
The Buddhists do not believe in Atman.
Okay.
Do not believe in a self. Okay? So, when you are reincarnated, it's you. There is no self that goes that takes another life form.
Okay.
Okay. So the concept is called anatman, meaning no self,
I see.
no
Okay.
self theory. That's the difference with Buddhism with Hinduism. They do not believe in the self, in the Atman. So the reincarnation is like the flame of a candle being passed to another candle. So there's no substantial self that is being reincarnated.
I see. Okay. So that's a difference.
Yeah, that's
I
the
see.
difference.
All right. Okay. Sir, this contemplation, I think for many young people, no, since our audience will be our students, I think it's quite a big word because now in an age of distraction, with access to social media, and all of this, malling, and all the other activities that young people engage in. How will our students now be able to practice or adopt this ability to contemplate? And you said that it's being mindful. So is it similar to concentration?
Yeah.
Okay.
You see, usually the step there is you listen. Okay.
Listening.
Yeah. So you listen to a preacher or a priest maybe, or you read about the Bible.
I see.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's part of listening. And then the next step is concentration.
Okay.
Okay. concentration means that you become aware first of anything. Okay, you're aware of the sounds outside. You're aware of your companion. Okay, and then the next step is to, after being aware of several things, is to concentrate on what you have read or what you have heard. Okay, and part of that, it would be to imagine that you are, for instance, you're listening to the narrative of the birth of our Lord. Okay, or you're reading that part of the birth of our Lord. So you can imagine yourself as the cow. Okay, as
Or
the
the lamb.
animal or the lamb. Okay,
Yeah, okay.
and be concentrate on what is happening.
I
Okay,
see.
from based
Okay.
on what you have heard. And then the last part there would, of course, would be to be nothing.
To be nothing.
Yeah,
Okay, to be
emptiness.
Oh, okay.
That's the final thing.
Uh-huh.
To be empty.
Wow.
Because only when you're empty can you be filled.
That's so philosophical.
Diba?
Can you elaborate on that,
Yeah.
sir?
Only when you have emptied yourself of any craving, of any desires, okay, then you are able to be directed.
Wow. Okay. All right. So, you said that when we contemplate in action, it's first listening, right? And then it's being aware of the awareness, no? And then it's arriving at that nothingness and emptiness. In the area of psychology, sir, I'm just curious, no? Because the word feeling empty takes on a negative connotation when you say that I feel very empty. It seems like this person does not feel any sense of direction. So how do you reconcile? Because here it seems like to be a very achievable goal, and it's a desired goal to be empty. How is that emptiness in the Buddhist tradition different from the emptiness and desolation that people with depression or people undergoing crisis, how are they different from each other?
Okay. Well, the emptiness that is when you say I feel empty, it's a negative emptiness.
Yes.
Okay? It's a negative emptiness in the sense that you are so filled up with many things. Okay? You're so filled up with many things that you feel nothing because you're
Confused.
Okay?
Okay.
But the emptiness that is positive is a fullness. Okay? Eventually, of course, Buddhism evolved into Zen
Okay.
Buddhism. Okay? And what is important in Zen is silence. Okay? Silence. And that is achieved when you have removed all the logic, all that, and you have an insight. Okay? And that insight comes with emptiness. But it's an emptiness that is full.
And an
Positive.
emptiness that brings the person a certain degree of peace.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
It's really
There's that
peace.
peace and contentment. I see. Okay. And I think that's quite difficult to achieve in a society that is very consumerist, right? And very hedonistic.
Correct.
Okay. So if we have students, aspiring or wanting to experience this positive emptiness of them finding contentment and peace, but they are not Buddhists, they are mostly like many other Filipinos, they're Christians. What would be a good interface for them to be able to achieve this kind of quote unquote emptiness?
Okay. I would advise that we can practice this emptiness by stopping for a while.
Stopping.
At a certain point in your activities, you have to stop,
Mm-hmm.
okay,
And reflect.
and reflect. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Okay.
Stop and reflect, and then assess. No,
Mm-mm.
where am I going? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
am I doing the right thing? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's very important because you
Mm-hmm.
can be caught up with so many things
Mm-hmm.
and not heading any direction. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
so
You're going on too fast, but you don't know where you are
going,
going.
yeah,
All right. Okay. So now let's look at the principles of Buddhism in the context of some of our social problems
yes,
that we encounter now
yeah,
as a society. No, like for example, you have made mention of the fact that the universal love of Gautama Buddha is encompassing of all life forms.
yes,
And that brings us to, let's say, the environmental issues, no, that we encounter, day in and day out. You see, let's say, this problem of plastic,
yeah,
in the ocean, and this wild these animals, no, in the ocean, would end up dying because they have ingested plastic and
yeah.
all that, among other things, no. So how would a Buddhist solve or try to come up with solutions to these environmental concerns?
I will put it in one word:
Mm-hmm.
simplify.
Simplify.
Simplify your life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. uh, avoid desires.
Mm-hmm.
Avoid desires. Avoid craving. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if you only need very simple
Mm-hmm.
simple things, no,
Very little.
very little things to
Mm-hmm.
survive,
Mm-hmm.
and to get your work done, no.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my advice.
Yes,
Okay.
it's simplify.
Yeah,
So
and then
because when we simplify, we don't generate the garbage,
correct.
and
Yeah,
then we don't
yeah,
throw the garbage in the ocean
correct.
that end up killing the
Yes,
other life forms. Okay. And that's very Buddhist, like
yes,
simplifying. Okay. What about, because you have mentioned among the virtues, these issues about slander, frivolous chatter, and all that. What can you say about, let's say, our overexposure to social media and mass media that usually do not really encourage us to think critically and to think deeply? How would a Buddhist approach this problem of overexposure to social media and the mass media?
yeah. Overexposure is
Mm-hmm.
too much.
Too much.
In
Yes.
other words, the Buddha,
Mm-hmm.
the eightfold path of the Buddha
Mm-hmm.
is really called sometimes the middle path.
The middle path.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
it's a middle between two extremes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the extreme of self annihilation. Which Buddha tried. He tried fasting. This is not the way.
Mm-hmm.
And the other extreme is the life of the Buddha in the palace, no? Life of pleasure. He had several women.
Mm-hmm.
One woman for Mondays, another woman for Tuesdays, no? So life of pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
So the middle path is the life of simplicity.
I see.
Diba?
Okay. The life of simplicity. Which is, I think, when you look at the society now.
So in the use of the media,
Yes.
okay, use the media only when necessary.
All right.
Only when necessary.
And be mindful also in what you watch.
Yes.
In what you feed yourself in.
You have to be critical also.
You also have to be critical and really mindful and really be intentional, no? Be mindful with what you read, with what you you spend your time with.
Yeah.
Alright.
They have to post that where you are going and the places that you don't need to, di ba?
Opo. What about, for example, sir, the issue of the hypersexualization? Hypersexualization meaning the overuse of sexual practices or even, sexual ideas predominant in our society now.
Again, that's
Even in the cuss words, you know.
again, that's part of the pleasure, di ba?
Yes.
You know? That's living a life of pleasure, no? When you use cuss words, okay? That's not simplicity anymore.
I see. Okay. So I think a Buddhist will have a difficult time living in a society where we are right now with this kind of challenges to our moral integrity.
I was in China many years ago, and I stayed in a Zen temple, Zen Buddhist temple, and when we went there, I was surprised to see a Buddhist using a cell phone.
Okay.
Yeah. So they use technology,
But
but only when it is needed.
I see. When
So,
it is necessary for
when
them.
it is necessary.
I see. All right. So it's really having control over all of this technology.
Yes,
It's
yeah.
not the technology
Controlling
controlling
you.
you. I see. Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point, sir, that you highlighted that they are not backward in that sense, but they don't let anything own them. It's being mindful of how they use these gadgets, this technology. So, sir, some final words for our students who are very interested in Buddhism. If there are a few things that they should remember, that will help them as students embrace, some principles and practices in Buddhism. What would this be?
Oh, well, the basic idea of Buddhism is is to avoid cravings. Okay, and one way of avoiding craving is to be compassionate,
I see.
to live simply, so that others could simply live.
Okay. So simplify and be contented
Yes.
with what is simple.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So thank you very much for that, sir. And we'll be back for our third session, which is on Confucianism. So, dear students, that ends our discussion on Buddhism. And please stay with us as we move on to our next module, which is on Confucianism. Have a good day.